Let's bring in MSNBC contributor and author of the book, How the Right Lost Its Mind, Charlie Sykes, and former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, retired four-star Navy Admiral James Stavridis. He's Chief International Analyst for NBC News.
You know, Admiral, it's not like Donald Trump is trying to prepare us for the horrible things he'll do when he's president. He is. He's praising Orban. He says we need a strong man. He's telling us that. Says he's going to be a dictator on day one. He's telling us that. Here he's telling us he's going to encourage Vladimir Putin, a former Russian, a Soviet enemy, Vladimir Putin to just take over not only NATO, but not only Ukraine, but other NATO countries. I mean, talk about the dangers of this kind of talk becoming mainstream in American politics.
Terribly dangerous, and lives will be lost, particularly if he goes the next step and does something or attempts to do something truly foolish, ignorant, and that would be to pull out of NATO. I mean, let's just do the numbers for 1 second. NATO is 32 countries. It's 55% of the world's GDP. It's 3 million troops, active duty, well-trained, competent, almost all volunteers. It's got a collective defense budget of $1 trillion. And, oh, by the way, on the point of defense budgets, and back to the, sir, will you pay us, defend us if we don't pay? Well, again, let's do the numbers for a minute. U.S. spends $700 billion a year on defense. The Europeans collectively spend over $300 billion. It's the second largest defense budget in the world. That's more than China spends. And by the way, it's 3 times what Russia spends. And then the other part, Joe, and your rendition of it was pretty accurate, is just the condescension, the arrogance. John Howman's exactly right. I've been to 1 million NATO summits. I've never heard a head of state call another head of state anything but by their first name. And so you see Donald Trump treating NATO like it's a protection racket. You know, hey, you've got a nice little country here. Be a shame if something happened to it. It fails on every level, frankly.
Well, the Wall Street Journal editorial board is also weighing in on the ex-president's comments. The editors write, in part, Mr. Trump's riff also comes in the context of his lobbying against more U.S. military aid for Ukraine. He boasts about his admiration for Mr. Putin and his bromance with the dictator during the 2018 Helsinki summit was a low point of his presidency. Mr. Trump now says he'll end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours, even before he's inaugurated. The only way to do that is to deny Ukraine more weapons and tell President Volodymyr Zelensky to give Mr. Putin what he wants. The word for that isn't peace, it's appeasement. The U.S. should be having an election debate over the growing dangers to U.S. security and how to counter them. Instead, we have an incumbent who has presided over the collapse of U.S. deterrence and a GOP frontrunner who dotes on dictators. No wonder Mr. Putin is looking so confident these days.
Well, the Wall Street Journal had to throw in that line just for its readers that Mr. Biden is like not discouraging deterrence. It couldn't be any further from the truth. What he's done in Ukraine is extraordinary.
What he wants to do.
What he support. Just extraordinary how he's built that up. And the same with Israel. What's happened there? It's just. We'll talk about that later. It's become such a mess with Netanyahu. But Charlie Sykes, the Wall Street Journal editorial page, for the most part, nails it, talking about just how dangerous this is. And yes, talks about 2018 when Jonathan Lemire asked the question to Vladimir or to Donald Trump who he trusted more, and he said the Russians over his own intel community. But this is sinking even further for Donald Trump, and the Wall Street Journal editorial page is right. This is extraordinarily dangerous. His bromance with Vladimir Putin. Russian hoax? No Russian hoax. No Russian hoax. There continues to be an admiration there that makes America weaker, that makes America less safe, that makes Western democracy endangered.
Yeah, this is Fat Elvis, but it's Fat Elvis with nukes. I mean, we have to balance out the clownishness of much of this with how really fundamentally dangerous it is. And the Wall Street Journal is right. You have to put this in context. This comment over the weekend is not a one-off. It is consistent with what Donald Trump has been saying for years, what he has been signaling for years. And the rest of the world is listening to this. And you know, the way to start wars, of course, is to have miscalculations. And he is signaling weakness. He is signaling appeasement. He is signaling surrender. So there are real world consequences to the things that Donald Trump is saying. And of all of the things, you know, this is a very inconsistent, very erratic man. But one of the consistent things about Donald Trump has been his willingness to bow his knee to Vladimir Putin, to ask for favors from Vladimir
Constantly.
Putin. He will attack everyone in the world. I can't find any reference where he's ever criticized Vladimir Putin. And again, we have NATO watching. Our allies are watching. Vladimir Putin is watching. The Chinese are watching what Donald Trump is saying. And again, as the Wall Street Journal points out, this is not just an off-the-cuff remark at a rally. This comes amid his campaign to basically kneecap the aid to Ukraine right now. People got to take this very, very seriously because it feels as if we are sleepwalking into a global catastrophe while we're focusing on maybe some of the atmospherics of American politics. But this is real, and it will have real world consequences, as the Admiral said.
Jonathan, Charlie's so right, and the Wall Street Journal editorial page is so right. Not only is he saying that he's going to encourage Russia to invade our NATO allies, he's also actively right now working and intimidating Republicans in Congress to kill funding for Ukraine, to basically turn the country over to Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, he already pushed them to kill the border bill, which would have had also the national security funding for Ukraine. That died. The Senate has taken some steps now to pass a standalone that'll have foreign aid bill, including a lot to Ukraine. But there's a real sense that even if the Senate does pass it, it won't get through the House, largely because Donald Trump has poisoned fellow Republicans in the House against helping Ukraine. Let's recall, right before Trump went to Helsinki in 2018, he was in Brussels at a NATO summit meeting and was this close to pulling the U.S. out then. We shouldn't doubt him when he says he will do it if he's elected again, giving Vladimir Putin free rein throughout Europe. So